beautiful humans. Happy Tuesday. Um, Thank you for the patience while we were working with our tech gremlins here. Yeah, super exciting that Loto Vázquez Simón is here with us today. And it's been an interesting experience coming on, and it will potentially inform the half hour of the conversation that we have left for today. And then we just decided before coming on that we will do a more in-depth conversation on the 18th of April. So invitations for that will be sent to all of you. And also, if you want to join in the community, then yeah, we'll update you on that as well. Yeah, so to introduce you, Loto, I think the one thing that I want to highlight is like how soft-spoken you are. And that's something that I think struck me from the very first minute that we connected, that you really speak from your heart and yeah, speak with a lot of care and consideration. And I feel it probably comes from you being practiced as a monk. And then also, yeah, you've been an entrepreneur, or you are an entrepreneur and an author, a coach, speaker, deeply into the space of fear hacking. And so I think what I want to get into here, because I mean, since you've been 16, you've been kind of like studying all sorts of interesting areas, from like yoga to going into the monk education to being in the space of philosophy. And what I'm curious about, like, what is it that you've been seeking, or what are the fears that you have experienced yourself, that you have then developed your methodology to conquer them?
The first thing that comes to my mind, hi everyone, it's an honor to be here. Sorry for the technical issues. It's been mad. I'm so curious of why did this happen, why it was meant to happen this way. And I guess it can be fuel for this conversation, which is about turning fear into love, or friction into flow. And so that memory that is coming of deep friction and truly connecting with fear, I'm actually with a tripod that I have now here with me for many years, and I was about to shoot a YouTube video in the middle of the forest in a mountain nearby. Actually, I don't live here anymore. I've been nomadic for the last few years, but I used to live in this area where I'm right now in Tarragona, near Barcelona. And I'm there about to shoot this video, and I'm watching myself in the camera looking at me, and I start crying. And I still have this vivid picture in my mind of myself wearing a black t-shirt, I think, and crying in front of myself. And I don't look really pretty when I'm trying to cry. But it was coming from realizing that I was afraid to be truthful with my mentor. That I was aware what was the clear, most valuable next step that I could take, which was opening up with him and saying, hey, I need help to be more clear, to be able to really access the next level that I'm so longing to access. But fear was stronger than my own will, or that's the way it felt at that moment. And I remember feeling like this dark, strong force pulling me from inside, like pulling me down and back, and say, where do you think you are going? And obviously that wasn't the first time I experienced fear, but in that moment something clicked in me. I was like, okay, if fear seems to be the only thing that is really stopping me. Every time I feel stopped or blocked, it's fear, really, in essence. So it makes sense, at least theoretically, that if I conquer fear, I will finally be free. And by that time, I had already been a monk for a decade. And still, of course, I was experiencing more peace than the average person, or at least I thought so. I was. But I wasn't free. And a decade is not a lifetime, but it's fucking a lot of time, a decade. So it got to that time when I was reconsidering or reevaluating, is this the strategy that I am meant to follow? And I started to, instead of following my mentor, following myself. And I started to say, it makes sense, I'm gonna dig as deep as possible into this conquering fear. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, but that's definitely the moment when I had that aha light bulb popping up and saying, this is the direction. In my experience, it's been true. I haven't conquered all of my fears. I have conquered the ability to conquer fear. In my experience, there is endless fears. There is a fear to the unknown, to the possibility of suffering at the other side of this undiscovered land that we may want to explore. And fear is not the problem. The problem is running away from it. Fear is only covering pain and the possibility of suffering, but suffering comes only by trying to run away from our own ghost, from our own shadow, our own challenge. But when we face it, it's invigorating, it's empowering, and it frees us.
I think what you're sharing there reminds me so much of what also Rich Litvin talks about. He has this like exercise where he basically asks you to list all your fears, and then it's almost like fear being sort of that shell that holds that kernel of freedom. Or yeah, and I think you put an interesting spin on it when you say, you know, like when you lean into the fear, it becomes invigorating. And so it's almost as if the fear is kind of the wrapper for a gift that, yeah, I think you got to be courageous to sort of like, I would say, look at the darkness and sort of like integrate that. And I mean, you know, you've helped, I think, tens of thousands of people to navigate their fears. And I'm curious, like in the fear hacking towards these exponential results that you're creating, what would you tell people as, let's say, the easy steps of like how to hack their fears into igniting it and using it as fuel?
You are not wasting time. You are going to the core of the
You got to get to the kernel.
This is the way I start the sessions when I have the privilege to engage one-on-one or in a group with other amazing humans like us and everyone watching this. The first step is to know what you want. Why? Because if you don't know what you truly want, what is your purpose, what is the life that you truly dream of, not almost what you would like to have, but fully what you want to have and be and do, doesn't need to be with every detail, but yes, that you know, if you had that, you will be overflowing with gratitude, feeling blessed, truly blessed. And that can be done in a few minutes. And we haven't talked about this, but we could somewhere put a link to a free session, maybe with myself or with one of the mentors that I've trained myself. And everyone who feels I want to go deeper into this could experience this in a more in-depth and with facilitation. Why knowing first what you truly want? Because if not, there is not enough fear. Because the hardest fears are those stopping us from taking the risk to fail in those things that truly matter to us. It's not easy to be afraid to come talk with someone that you don't really care so much or that you don't really admire that much. But when you really look up to someone, whether it's someone you are attracted to sexually or intimately, romantically, or someone you are attracted to professionally or in any way, but you truly care so much that the stakes are higher. right? And it's easier to be afraid, what if it doesn't work? What if I am rejected? What if it doesn't work? What if I am successful and then I don't know what to do with that new situation I am not used to? So that's why we need to start with what is what we truly want. Also, because it's not about facing fear just because that sounds cool. It's really about living your purpose, or that's what I believe. It's about fulfilling why I came to this planet on this time. And in a way, we all came to expand love, to realize love as deeply as possible, to discover that we are endless potential. But then when we see specifically what is what moves us so much, then is when fear becomes this meaningful barrier and this meaningful source of creativity and sharp intelligence and true power or true unstoppability and true self-love, true self-respect, and with that, true respect for anyone in front of us, because we always love the others only as deeply as we have learned to love ourselves. So that would be the first step that I take, that I do myself, and that I will recommend and do it actively to anyone else.
Mate, I really love how you're because a lot of people would like lean away from fear, but you're like, man, it's not enough fear yet, you know, you just gotta have more fear so that it really highlights like what is it that you truly desire. That is a really awesome reframe. And yeah, especially I think the fear around being successful. I mean, it's something that I'm noticing in myself, you know. And I want to actually link this to because what I'm noticing when things begin to work and I tend to become successful, it means that I need to change my identity. I no longer can be who I am right now, but I actually need to let go of my current self basically in order to embrace that future self. And I think that for me has a lot to do with sort of the nervous system, you know, where regardless whether it's going towards something like less desirable or more desirable, it's always a change. And that for me, I think ticks off my nervous system of like, man, let's go back to equilibrium, you know, let's not stay here. But so how do you manage that, let's say, physiological component? Because I mean, you've yourself been going through these evolutions to being a successful entrepreneur, and you've not always been that. So you've in many times, I think, encountered your nervous system being like, nope, that's not quite where we want to go. Let's be where we are sort of familiar. And what were your tools to allow yourself to shift?
I love it. I love how you keep digging in the most important part instead of just curiosity, which is also cool. But we can have both, the most juicy and the curiosity satisfied. First, I want to tap into your comment on, I love how you go into let's get fear higher instead of just handle the fear that you have. It's not because I like unnecessary risk. Fear is one thing. Risk or awareness of risk and danger is a different one. And awareness of danger is absolutely useful, but fear is absolutely unuseful, or the only value of fear is a symptom to know here there is untapped energy, untapped creativity, and untapped clarity. That's the only value of fear. It's like an alarm. Hey, look at here. There is more waiting for you right here. While awareness of danger is like, I don't need to take unnecessary danger or risk. I'm going to face this danger or risk if it's truly meaningful. What's going on? Okay, I think I'm back.
You're good. Yeah. Yeah, and I love this. Like, and I just want to highlight this again when you said like the value of fear is a symptom of untapped energy, creativity, and clarity. And I feel just like that reframe is so beautiful, man. Then, you know, when the next time fear arises, it's like, wow, thank you. I'm excited. rather than like, ooh, let me sort of like cower away, you know?
Exactly. So what we want to explore, definitely what I found my most useful to explore, is to tap into enough hunger. There is this cool sentence that it's catchy. It's the bigger the why, the easier the how. And it's true. If my hunger is this high and my fear is this high, then it's a no-brainer. But if my hunger of eating that fear, devouring or conquering that fear is this, even if the fear is smaller, but my hunger is smaller even than my fear, then it's going to be really tough. So that's why first, why do you want this? What is what you truly are aiming for? And then what is the barrier? But now it's a barrier to something so meaningful. Your commitment, not your. Here's another cool thing. I don't believe commitment is a choice. Commitment is something that we discover. It's like gold that we find inside of our inner mind. And when we find that commitment that was already there, that it's finally ready, ripe, then success is inevitable, or at least unstoppability, it's a given. So now I'm hungry enough. It doesn't matter the size of the fear. Now it's about navigating fear without suffering. And this is one of the things that I'm the proudest for sure, is I know how to transcend suffering, not in a decade like it took me, and it failed actually. I didn't achieve it in a decade, but in a handful of months, just by practicing and practicing and practicing the answer to your question, which is how to physiologically deal with it. And if we can, all of us, think of a fear right now, fear of rejection when someone really matters, or fear of success, and then how do I handle this new identity that you were mentioning, that it's so true. It's like, who am I? If my identity is being I'm trying to be successful, and suddenly I am, I need to reframe who I am. Or fear of failure, fear of losing everything that you have finally conquered. So now we feel that tension in our body. I'm afraid that maybe by simplifying it too much is not deep enough. But again, we will put somewhere that link so people who want to go deeper can do that in a proper framework. But basically, it's understanding that fear is tension, is contracted and stored energy. The same energy, not a different one. There is only one energy based on Einstein, or at least my understanding of Einstein. So the same energy, when it's expanding and flowing, it's well-being, clarity, creativity, enthusiasm. It's the same one. Contracted is pain, and expanding is well-being and clarity. So we just need to learn to expand the same energy. And we do it by expanding our physiology. For example, expanding our breathing, our posture, and our jar. So literally, all the things that are contracted in us, we are expanding it. And now that tension can move and will move more freely through us. And we use for that attention, intention, and action. I have even this wooden puzzle. You are consciousness, right? We are all consciousness. That's our nature, whether we like it or not. Before we were born, we don't need to agree, but if we dig enough, we will discover that's the case, and all the ancient teachings were right. That same consciousness, when it's focused or has a direction, it's intention. It's the same consciousness now with a focus or a direction. That's intention. And then that intention in this world becomes action. And with attention, intention, and action, we can, I think I'm throwing too many concepts, but we will go deeper on the 18th at 4 p.m. Barcelona and Berlin time. Okay, so you use attention, intention, and action to expand energy. So you have contracted energy. Now you notice it, attention. Instead of run away from it, you face it, you give attention to it. Then you have the intention to expand this energy. Instead of to contract it, to run away, to push it away, you hold the intention to let it move through you, to actually even move it through you from head to toes, from toes to head. And then you do this subtle action, expanding your breathing, your posture, and your yar. Attention to the tension, intention to expand that energy through your body, from head to toes, toes to head, and then expanding. The action is expanding, breathing, posture, and yar. And only with that, instead of suffer with the pain, with the contraction, you can even enjoy that contraction becoming expanded, that tension becoming well-being, that contraction becoming blossoming. And with this, I think it's enough condensed content. When you discover that you don't need to suffer ever again, because you can approach the cause of suffering, which is the struggle with pain. And now you can, instead of struggle it, use it as a source of energy. Now you are free from suffering. Fear is your friend instead of your enemy. And now you can truly dedicate your lifetime to live your purpose and to have as much fun and as much love and as much connection with yourself and others as you were meant to, or as I believe every human was meant to.
Dude, this is really beautiful. I really enjoy this reframe of the contracted energy, and that it's almost like a lake. It's like where the water is stagnant, and once you start building a river, then you can run like some sort of like water turbine and create electricity from the energy that once was stuck, like once it's in motion. And I think particularly this component of like focusing on the body, because I mean, embodied is all about this sort of like moving from kind of like head to the body. And I think we've talked about it a lot, and you're doing earlier, you're like, kind of like, you know, feeling pulled back. And it was really a sort of like kind of throat chakra, right? Like where the energies that arise just couldn't pass through into the spoken word. And so again, now using the body as instrument of like, man, where's stuff stuck? And how can I focus in on and relax? And suddenly my world shifts because I changed the filters in my perceptive tool.
Something powerful that I think it can be useful to all of us in this conversation is to realize that as high performers, that I'm sure either everyone or most of us are, it's not about getting too much new knowledge. It's about mastering knowledge that we probably already have. One of my first reactions when I finally discovered, from that moment, crying in front of the camera, to the months later where I finally discovered, wow, it's that simple. If I face fear, fear eventually falls apart. I was in an island next to Bali in Indonesia, in Lombok, in a room in a hotel, just exploring and diving inside of myself. And finally I realized it is like, every time I dare to stay with my fear, eventually my fear falls apart. Then just really fast after that, I realized, man, it's not really something so new. I actually have known this almost since the beginning of my journey when I was 16. It's just I never dare to keep it simple enough and dig deep enough to fully harvest all the potential that there was in that same approach, the fundamentals of personal and spiritual growth. So I think for most of us here, we don't need much newer knowledge. It's about fully harvesting all the potential that is awakening for us if we know what we want and we truly stay focused until it bends to us or it surrenders to us.
I think what you're hiding in there is this piece around presence and being present with the self instead of being so easily kind of drawn out. Yeah, because I said myself as well that the components meaningful to me. It's something that I already said when I was a teenager, and those are these moments that were this was the video grumbling on my side.
It's crazy, eh? It's really challenging us. Eh? It's checking if we are gonna take it seriously or we are gonna stay cool.
Yeah, and I sometimes wonder, like when I noticed that there's a correlation between like technology fucking up and like some real hardcore truth being transmitted. So yeah, I feel there's something with that.
I think when you were speaking about things that you discovered when you were a teenager.
Exactly, yeah. And it were these things, when I was saying to my mom at one time, the only thing that ever stays constant in life is change. And it's this weird, I think it relates to this whole fear piece as well, where sort of the fear of the unknown. And there's part of me that really absolutely loves the unknown. I'm like an innovator, and I just enjoy questing into areas that I don't know. And at the same time, I have this deep craving for like stability, and it's this weird sort of paradox that I feel I'm continuously navigating. So what areas of my life are stable and what areas of my life are completely, molding. And I noticed that at times, when things get too stable in my life, I start like messing things up because I do want more novelty and excitement. And that's where I'm really noticing this whole piece of like identity transformation and that being so vital. Like when we are growing as individuals and lovers, business owners, I feel really comfortable in this sort of like early stage of kind of like startup, it's like making things work. But then sort of like growing beyond that and delegating, having employees and things like it's a whole different ballgame. Because suddenly, it requires a whole different skill set of how do I show up. And that's, I feel, for me at the moment, this big transformation of letting go of the minute little details and just continuing to be sort of the frame holder, ultimately leaning into conquering the fear of, yes, that is the life that I want, and I'm worthy to have it.
Mm-hmm. I think that is so deep. I was telling one of my premium clients and dear friend today that deservefulness, really tapping and connecting into deservefulness is so key. That's one of the most powerful exercises, but I don't know, not today. Maybe they think we can tap into it, and if not in those gift sessions that we will offer to people. But there is an exercise to like focus in one specific topic, for example, deserving, which is so key to let life give you and receive fully and let it stay, that new level of abundance, connection, enjoyment, peace, flow. And it's tapping into where are the fears that are stopping you from really embracing this, because sometimes we understand it intellectually or energetically, intuitively, or we know how to do it, but it's not enough with one of them. You can know it intellectually, but there is something in you that doesn't really allow it to happen, or you can know how to execute it, but you procrastinate, or you feel into it, but then you don't do it. So but by digging into where are the fears, the untapped, the invisible subconscious fears around, really allowing it to be and transform you, as you were saying, change your identity. Once you dig and see those, then it's so easy to come back to that state and to that alignment and to take the proper actions and to turn it into a habit, that it gets integrated and transforms your life with quite some ease. And in essence, every fear is fear of suffering. Fear of rejection is the fear that I will suffer if I'm rejected. Fear of failure is that I will suffer if I fail. Fear of success is that I will change too much, not know who I am or how to handle myself or my life, and suffering being in the midst of too much unknownness. The fear of everything getting stagnant and being too boring. I'm gonna suffer if I just go too deep into this and get too structured and get too stable. I'm gonna lose the juice and I will suffer somehow. But at the end, fear is really just a sign of, hey, there is more energy, more creativity, and more power, more connection with yourself and who you truly are, and the power of who you are awaiting for you behind every one of these fears.
Dude, I really love this, that every fear is a fear of suffering. And maybe the last thing we can briefly look at is, what is suffering really? Like, how do you define that?
I love the conversation because not necessarily consciously, but it's, from my perspective, is gravitating to simplify things. And I think that's so key, because it's when things are simple enough that we can handle them. Einstein used to say it's easy to explain things in a complicated way. It requires genius to really simplify things. And I think that's why mastery is so hard, because it requires that perseverance into the subtleties and the subtleties and the subtleties until you really find those gems and create models that allow you to comprehend reality and relate to it in a really clear, more effective way. About suffering, I think the time that I suffered the most was when I was from 13 to 16, the previous years to my awakening. And it wasn't because life was that hard, but my sensitivity was way bigger than the level of awareness and mindfulness of my environment. And the more I tried to connect with that environment that wasn't really mindful, the more I got farther away from myself, more disconnected from myself, and I suffer most. But I believe suffering is not pain. As the sentence goes, pain is inevitable, suffering is a choice. Pain is something that happens inevitably as we are humans, and we have physical pain and emotional pain and intellectual pain. But suffering is when we are trying to get rid of the pain and we don't know how. And we get there stuck, spinning our wheels, creating more pain instead of less. So when we realize we can, instead of run away from pain, which is the addiction and the illness of this society, the addiction to run away from pain or discomfort. We are so addicted to comfort. We think comfort and love or comfort and fulfillment are the same, when really, as soon as we dig a little deeper, it's so obvious that comfort is never fulfillment. And we are too comfortable, we become empty and unsatisfied. So when you turn around, it's like Pac-Man, Pac-Man is or Neo running away from the agents and from the bullets, and suddenly he says, "Screw the shit," turns around, stays in front of the bullets first, dodging them, realizing, "Hey, I can handle this. It's actually cool," and then say, "Stop it. I'm not even gonna dodge you," and just stares at them, at those fears, at those pains, and they fall apart in front of them. And he discovers more power through that daring to be the master. And I think we are meant, every human, we are meant to live beyond suffering. And we do need to conquer this and spread the word. So human life can be about regenerating paradise, regenerating love everywhere and for everyone, instead of all this madness of trying to have a decently good life for ourselves while billions are in ridiculous, disrespectful experiences of life in most countries or in many.
Wow, mate, this has been super awesome today. It's been only like 30 minutes, but whew. And I'm really grateful, mate, that we're coming back together on the 18th to go deeper into fear. And I feel, just to highlight a couple of things, is really fear is a meaningful barrier. That's one of the beautiful things that I'm taking away. And then the component of our hunger to the life that we desire, outstripping the fear that holds us back from actually stepping into it. And then ultimately what you said towards the end, that every fear is a fear of suffering. Is there any recap things that you want to add at the end as well?
Yeah, I do have the feeling like I said almost too many things for the amount of time, and we can only integrate a few things. I say the key is to go deep enough. If something makes sense, like for me in that moment, in that mountain surrounded by the forest in front of the camera, suddenly I'm afraid. It's that simple. And it makes sense that if I conquer fear, I will be free. When something, maybe this, conquer fear, or maybe whatever it is that truly makes sense, daring to go deep enough and truly master it is the challenge that we all high performers have. Is like digging deep enough to truly harvest all the treasures that are awaiting for us, instead of keep on being a bit too shallow and having results better than most, but still way less than what is really possible for us. So perseverance and going deeper in when you find something that truly clicks for you and makes sense for you until you master it.
Love that. Yeah, for everyone who's been here with us today, so all the links to where you can find more about Loto and the amazing work. Check the links there. Also, if you want to share the link for these like deeper sessions, I can add this in, or you can add it here into the chat if you want.
I'll send it to you via WhatsApp, and you.
Yeah, and I'll share it with everyone who was here.
I'm not a master of this platform yet, obviously.
Yeah, we will have you back on the 18th of April. So until then, Loto, brother, thank you so much for being here with me today and with all of us.
Thank you, everyone.
Lots of love.
Thank you very much, brother.
I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.